The Chaim Bloom era in St. Louis has officially begun. We just listened to Chaim Bloom's opening press conference as the new president of baseball operations here in St. Louis, setting the tone and setting a vision for what he sees as long-term success, long-term here in St. Louis. Can fans stomach what they avoided saying was a rebuild, but we all know Bloom was alluding to that. What did we take away from the press conference? What are we expecting now going into the offseason? And I think there's some fair stuff from the DeWitt family there too worth reflecting on. We'll talk about all this and more on this episode of Dealing the Cards. Welcome back into Dealing the Cards. Josh here, joined by Andrew. No Sandy today, but we have a lot to talk about. I know you guys did the Mo press conference review and tier list yesterday, so if you missed that, go check that out. We also had the part one of the Mo retroactive trades, where we did, I think it was 2008 through 2015 in part one, and we got part two coming out soon too. But today it's about the future. A lot of past talk recently, or in the last few days, but now it's on to what's next. Chaim Bloom is officially, after 2 years of runway for Chaim Bloom. Speaking of runway, Mo, Bloom is now in charge of the Cardinals, and we got to hear from him the first time basically in 2 years. He had one little snippet last year at this press conference when it was announced that he'd be taking over the role, which again, we know there's a lot of frustration, a lot of feelings about him starting late, but then we did get that tidbit from Mo recently, which I'll be interested to see if anyone asks Bloom about that today. But part of the reason they did take 2 years, but really a year for him to transition to the role, it was because of some personal reasons, and so he wasn't fully ready to take on the role yet. But he's in now, and he talked today about there are some advantages to being around for a couple years, that, which I think we've talked about this plenty on the podcast, where it's like not necessarily that we choose this route, but if you're trying to have the optimistic route or optimistic lens to this, it's like, well, most baseball executives have to step into a new job, new organization after a couple weeks of interviewing and some outside studying and take over the whole operation. And that means running everything you have to do as a president of baseball operations from the go, and also implementing change and hiring new staff and all this kind of stuff. Like that's a lot. And instead, he got to come in and investigate first internally, then present his findings to the DeWitt family, then take a year to start implementing those things and bringing in staff, getting to know people, and now he takes over the operation. So will it work? Time will tell. And it doesn't mean that Mo handled that year perfectly, right? Even just because you have a decent process doesn't mean it was executed well, from one side of it. But I feel like, I mean, we just saw today, like 3 prospects in the Cardinals system were named to all MLB prospect teams, and that was tied for the most of any organization. You saw a bunch of pitching prospects this year take steps forward. You saw right now Rodriguez continue to rise. You see JJ Weatherhole knocking on the door of Major League Baseball. Joshua Baez. There's a lot of young talent. Major League level was a little more disappointing this year, that's for sure. So hey, but guess what? Bloom was in charge of the minor leagues. Mo's in charge of the major leagues. So if you want one to be successful last year, it's probably the minor leagues. But Andrew, I've got a bunch of different topics or points we could talk about. I just want to hear your overall thoughts from the presser today, and also to expect more and more stuff to come out even beyond the presser today. They alluded to Bloom's going to have a lot of availability today, so people in the room right now are going to be discussing with him, asking questions, and doing some follow-ups. So, but yeah, Andrew, what was your initial reactions to this, and then let's get into some specific things that Bloom jumped into.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was definitely exciting to hear a voice that was not Mo. You know, like we were talking about this yesterday. You're probably a little bit different, but I don't remember a time in my life where Mo was not in charge of the Cardinals. So
I do, but I wasn't like, as an
yeah,
8-year-old, I wasn't like plugged into the Walt Jocketty press conferences. So a little different.
So I don't really have that other side. So it's definitely cool to see somebody else take that over. And, you know, he seems very different from Mo already. He seems very direct instead of kind of dancing around things.
Yeah.
They didn't ask him about a rebuilding, which I'm sure they will eventually. Like we've heard
him directly. Yeah.
Yeah. So the DeWitts kind of addressed that, which Bill DeWitt Jr. was like, well, you know, we're still going to be kind of good. And Bloom did say that. He said they're not going to like give up anything to, you know, for next year. They're not going to just like try to be terrible at the major league level. And they're still going to like work hard and do all of those things. And I think that definitely is good to hear, that, you know, they might trade away certain pieces in this offseason. Like, you know, Lars Nootbaar might be gone. Nolan Arenado might be gone. But honestly, a lot of the pieces that we've been talking about in trade discussions probably won't be, that great anyway, right? Like Arenado, what's he going to give you next year that Nolan Gorman or Sajc or JJ at third won't give you? I don't know. It's probably not that much better, if at all. So I think that's fine. I don't think they're going to blow it up based on this, which is something that I was kind of worried about. They didn't. I would like to hear what some of the reporters have to ask Bloom about, rebuilding and things like that. If he addresses it directly, he also mentioned that he wouldn't rule out signing a big free agent this offseason, which is kind of weird.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I think his point was that, which I actually like it, right? He's like, in the way that the Wits maybe in the past they would never say no, and no, Mo never really said no either, and they talk about opportunistic, but it is a different feel where it's like, hey, if something falls into our laps, we're gonna go for it, or if we think it makes sense and people aren't valuing it like they should, we'll go for it. But yeah, no one should expect that's happening.
But I think he did also mention that he was like supplement the roster with certain pieces. I think that's what he was more alluding to, like doing things other than signing Phil Maton this offseason. Things like that. Maybe going out and finding marginal pieces and things that would prioritize the future, right? So like if you sign a 1-year deal with a starter, that you need just to keep your team like having enough depth, but then also using that starter at the trade deadline to get pieces back that you could build around in the future. I think that's something that I really want to see, signing guys like that, not necessarily Mo dumpster diving or whatever you call low hanging fruit. But like getting projects that you can work on that maybe will get you something back at the trade deadline is something that I'm excited to see. He didn't obviously directly address that. He only had like 25 minutes with him. And the DeWitts were answering some questions too, which, the fact that they haven't talked about payroll a single time is kind of concerning. Just admitting that is also kind of, I don't know. I would hope that you would have at least had that conversation once with the guy that's taking over your team. But
well, I mean, they did that last year too, and then Mo was like, payroll's going down. Like, I think the DeWitts specifically have never really, at least especially this early in offseason, been the ones to totally confirm that kind of stuff. I think some of it's fluid too, right? Where it's like if they're moving Arenado, if they're moving Gray, I think when they say what's payroll going to be, they're more so thinking what are they going to be spending on the big league club, less about. Anyways, I think they know what they will have to work with. And also, too, this is one of the things that Bloom's coming in for. He's not just concerned about what's my budget to spend on the major league roster. He's concerned about what's my budget to spend at minor league levels, for infrastructure, for staffing, for personnel. And that's been Mo's MO too. That's part of the reason the things fell apart a little bit is he started to shrink the pie on the other things and put more and more money toward major league salaries, which you could obviously blame the DeWitts and say, hey, they should just given him more money for that. But I think just Bloom has a different, well, maybe not a different philosophy than Mo then, but he talked about if you sacrifice for short-term gains when you need to have the long view, it ends up hurting you in the end. And so if you keep the long view in mind, things typically work out for you. And I think that's his point here is I doubt what he's saying today is that 3-4 years from now, they're like one of the top 5 teams in baseball and they're ready to go for it. But he's like, nope, can't do it. Never do it. I don't think that's what he's saying. I think he's saying today, when you're setting the foundation, making that huge splash on a free agent, like part of the advantage, like especially how free agency works today, Kyle Tucker hits free agency. Obviously, the Cardinals would be lucky to get Kyle Tucker. I'm not saying it'd be dumb to sign Kyle Tucker, but it's not as advantageous to sign him in 2025, 2026 as it would be to sign whoever Kyle Tucker is in 2029, 2030, because you're paying for his prime when you're bad. And then when you're good, he's making all this money and he's not good. So I think they have to be strategic with the level of payroll they're going to have long term about when they decide to go in on something like that. But otherwise, I think right now it's building toward the future, right? And they talked about it. Like Bloom was saying, one of the things I really liked, and he's continued to reiterate this, is they fell behind. There's a lot of work to do. They made progress this year, but they're not content with. I mean, they're excited about what progress they made, but they are not anywhere satisfied with where they're at yet, at the major league level or the minor league levels. And it's that kind of relentlessness. It's that kind of vision. That doesn't mean it's going to work, but you got to have that kind of philosophy and vision if you're going to actually overhaul this. I love what he said his goal for the organization is that the Cardinals should set the standard in baseball. They shouldn't be trying to squeak in. They shouldn't be in the mix. They shouldn't be the team that everyone's kind of like, and then they kind of like sign those random free agents that make it get done, like maybe in the early years. But he wants to get back to the early 2010s where I've got the magazine here again. He wants to get back to this where like people like, again, not Sports Illustrated. You won't do that anymore, but he wants the Athletic. He wants, well, I mean, it's just not the same anymore, but he wants it to be where, like right now, everyone talks about the Milwaukee Brewers all the time, and rightfully so. And Cardinals keep talking about them. Again, I'll get to it in a second. He wants to be the organization that people bring up when they're saying we got to be like Tampa, we got to be like Cleveland, we got to be like LA, we've got to be like Milwaukee. He wants people to say we need to be like St. Louis again, and they're just nowhere near that right now. But then I mean, I think this is really important. I would love to hear kind of what you took from it. He was asked directly about how much they're going to replicate the Tampa Bay Rays way, and that there's speculation, hey, you came from Tampa, are you just going to do that here? And he shot that down really to say like, what works for Tampa Bay works for Tampa Bay, and we need to figure out what works for St. Louis. And so I totally believe he's going to take principles from the Tampa Bay Rays, as he's going to take principles from the Milwaukee Brewers and the Dodgers and the Mariners, and which also think of those organizations. He's from Tampa. Serfolio's from Cleveland. Pierpont, who's overseeing pitching, is from Seattle, and look at their stinking rotation. It's insane. They got Larry Day, who I think was from Cleveland. They got someone from LA. They're going to make more, bring some more people in over the offseason. Like they're widening their net because they want to learn from the best organizations, and then not just copy what everyone else is doing, but get those innovative minds in the same room from different groups to think about what do we innovate here. It's not just how do we get Tampa's pitching develop, or Tampa and Seattle's pitching development, and then Milwaukee's pitching development. Put that all. I think, actually, maybe it is. It's taking the best parts of all those things and then making it even better in St. Louis. That's the vision he has for things. And so when I hear something like that, and this is where I want to ask you, like, when you hear him kind of shoot that down and talk about building toward the future, I'm hearing it as, guys, you got to get ready for the lean years on the front end. But they fully expect, I'm not going to put a number to it. I'm not going to say it's 200 million. I'm not going to say it's 180. I'm not going to say it's 170, 90, whatever. But I don't think they're going moving to this world where they're going to make Tampa, Milwaukee, where you're spending 140 million at best. Like, I really do think you're going to get to a place where they end up spending more on payroll. But payroll's not the big thing because look, Cleveland, Milwaukee, Seattle, I mean, look at the playoffs right now. They're littered with teams that aren't like the Mets just missed the playoffs. Payroll isn't everything. It's not the most important thing, but it is important. I'm not trying to diminish that. But what can make St. Louis special and truly compete with the Dodgers and Mets and Phillies and all these teams in a way that the Rays and Guardians sometimes fall a little short when they get to the postseason is that if the Cardinals can do what those organizations do best at the foundation and then add on top of it the things that the Rays will never be able to spend money on or the Guardians will never be able to spend money on, but they're not going to do it to the level the Dodgers can. But if you could hit that like upper middle class spending with all the optimization that the lower markets have to do in order to compete, I think that's where things get really interesting. So I'm not saying like, and I've said this so many times before, 3 to 5 years from now, if the Cardinals aren't spending, I think that's a problem. But I just think people get so hung up on the spending and being like, oh, they just spent more money. I don't think throwing more money at this team right now fixes it. They got to get down to the foundation of the studs and fix it, and then they got to spend that money. But are you concerned at all that this money fiasco is just like, this is the front end of it, but it's just they're going to condition you over time to believe it's okay not to spend money, and then it's just they'll operate a little, or do you believe that they're really truly building towards something? Definitely not holding to Witt's water. I'm talking about Bloom here. If it wasn't Bloom in that seat, I probably feel like if I heard Dave Dombrowski, I would not feel good about it right now because you need to give Dave Dombrowski a lot of resources to go get something. Yeah, and I'm not trying to act like Dombrowski's not a good guy, a good executive, but like that's what he does best, right? He goes makes those aggressive moves. Like, anyways,
I definitely am less worried about it than I was before. I'm glad whoever asked that question. Sorry, I forgot. But good question, and thought it was a good answer from Chaim. I just really think that, I mean, obviously we're going to have disagreements with the DeWitts. I think you can do it both ways. And, DeWitt the third was talking about all these stadium amenities and like safety around this ballpark, which is important. But the Savannah Bananas drew a lot of thing, and no one is concerned about safety. So it's not about that. It's about the product on the field. But that's okay. I think, yeah, I'm definitely excited that they're going to continue the model of draft and develop and extend stars that you get. And, I think that's important, right? That's something that this organization was built on. It seems like Chaim has a lot of respect for what came before, and he's not going to just turn this into the Rays, which I think is, I think it's important to not do that. Like the Dodgers are the Rays with money. Maybe the Cardinals can be the Rays with a little bit less money than the Dodgers, right? Like probably a lot less, but still more than the Rays.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a lot of things that I'm excited about. I want to see what that looks like this offseason. I want to see what and yeah, I understand people are concerned about safety, but not to the extent where the stadium is empty, right, every single night. Like I think definitely there are a lot of changes that need to happen. I'm glad that the DeWitts didn't, blame the fans. They're like, yeah, we know there's a message, that the message is heard. And they still, see themselves as a mid-market team. That's what they said at least a couple of times. Hopefully that doesn't change anytime soon. But yeah, overall, payroll, not the most important, but also definitely is important, right? Like,
yeah,
I don't want to see them coming into this 2026 season with a $75 million payroll when they could have added, and they're starting like, I don't know, Quinn Matthews before he's on time, but before he's ready, and they have like random guys in the bullpen that, really don't need to be there. Like add at least marginally. Yeah. Okay.
I like this. Dodgers are the Rays with billions. Maybe we could be the Rays with millions.
Yeah.
Or maybe the CBA brings a salary cap, because that would be really helpful.
Yeah, that would be nice.
But
so yeah, I don't really think there's as much to worry about. They didn't really use the word rebuild. They danced around it again. I don't know how to feel about that. I think probably like me and like most fans, the word rebuild signals like we're going to do what the Rockies are doing, or we're going to do what the A's are doing. And that's just not right? Like that's not what is going to happen, and that's not what should happen. But there's definitely going to be change. It's going to be another season like last year or I guess this past season where it's going to be a lot of development and stuff like that. And I think, if JJ is good, that might expedite your process. I would have liked to know how long that he expects this sort of process to take before the Cardinals are really in World Series contention again.
Well, I think he said it. He said it to the players, 3 to 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, like, again, they might be generalizing a little bit, but like Contreras has said that, or not on Grave alluded to it, but Contreras literally put those words to it. He said it might be 3 to 5 years before we are a playoff team, World Series. Now, but here's the difference. He was saying today, it's like today they were technically competitive, or not today. This year they were technically a competitive playoff contender. Like they were. What they're talking about is that's not the standard here. The standard is how do we become a team where you go into the season, you look at the Cardinals as a legitimate World Series contender. Doesn't mean they're the favorite per se, but you're a team where you go into it thinking, if someone said, I think the Cardinals might win it all this year, you're not laughing and being like, you're a homer. You're like, oh yeah, I see it, because their pitching's really good and their lineup's awesome. And so that's going to take time to get there, but it doesn't mean it's going to take that much time to be a team that's fun to watch and competitive. It just depends on how things go with all that. So I think that's the difference. And like, think about like the Atlanta Braves rebuilding in the 2010s, and they did get really bad for a little bit there. And so there might be a couple years where it gets really bad here, but some of the calculus has changed in baseball where you can't just tank and have a number 1 overall pick every year. Like the lottery system does change things. And
also like most of the Braves like best players right now are foreign. So they're part of the like, and they're not even drafted.
Yeah, and that's where I think sometimes I'm like, I think like we almost treat like it, because it worked in Houston and Chicago. Like people are like, oh well, you have to tank and be terrible. And I just don't think that's where you have to go in Major League Baseball. There's a million different ways to upgrade your roster. You could do it through the international draft. You can do it through trades. Like he brought that up. He's saying we need to kill international, which they've started to do lately. And they need to keep pouring gas on that. Yeah, always back. Well, I want to talk about that in a second because it's just funny that people thought he was going to get fired. But so he's like that's happening. You can do it through free agency too. You can target other players and other organizations that are undervalued and go get your Randy Rosarina that you gave up. You can do it through the draft. You can do all these things, and you will do it through all these things, which makes it possible to build without just sucking. Like, right? Like if they trade Brendan Donovan this offseason and get a future a great piece for the future, and they get someone international free agency, and they nail the first round pick, and they get someone in the 9th round, and then they make another trade with Sonny Gray, and it's like, well, we thought this guy was gonna be nothing, and he ended up being something. And then Ivan Herrera keeps like there's I'm not saying all these things are going to happen, but that's the beauty of baseball is there are a lot of different ways to upgrade your roster over time and to build your system. And so I just don't think you have to tear down to the studs to be bad. Again, I said you could trade Brendan Donovan. I would not trade Brendan Donovan because I think he can be a part of helping build that future and have that culture moving forward. But I don't think people I think are like, oh, you have to trade all the players on the roster right now and just become really bad. And you could do that. That is one way to build, but it's equally as scary as not trading those guys, if not more to me, because there is a world then where you get stuck like the Rockies, or you get stuck like the Pirates, or you get stuck like whatever teams where every single year you just trade guys away because, well, you're not ready yet. Well, you're not ready yet. Well, you're not ready yet. And then you're never ready. And so I do think there is an element if you kind of have to keep a little bit of things around to see what happens. But yeah, so but I do think, hey, let's talk about this field staff side of things. Because I've heard some people say, like, how on earth has Bloom not fired Ollie? And I'm not coming back till Ollie's fired, and all these different things. Actually, let's do some ad reads real quick, and then we'll could go all of that, and then we'll thanks to our sponsors, and then we'll go on to the field staff because I know people are passionate about it. But as always, I want to thank 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. They're located at 9640 All Boulevard and Olivet. Open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 10 to 4 on Saturdays and Sundays. They buy, sell, and trade all sports cards and Pokemon cards. They have the new selections of packs, boxes, and single cards of local players and stars from around the league. Make sure you go check them out. They got awesome stuff going on there. We love our partnership with 314, and we would love for you guys to check them out, let them know we sent you, and let's show us what you pull or buy from the store. It's always fun seeing what people collect.
I'll show you guys what I buy from the store once I get back to St. Louis.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Andrew's got quite the card. I'm shaking my head, but he's in love with it, you know what? And it's your collection. You build your collection your way.
My trophy over a certain player, and my trophy over a certain front office, and my trophy over you guys for laughing at me in January.
All right. Well, congrats on your trophy that you could show everyone soon. And as always, we also want to tell you about our other sponsor, and that's Underdog Sports. The Deal in the Cards podcast is proud to be partnered with Underdog Sports, our favorite place to play fantasy games. You're now eligible to play in Illinois, Missouri, Indiana, and 37 other U.S. states. You got to check out Pick'em. It's so easy to play. You just pick 2 to 8 stats of your favorite players and choose whether they'll go higher or lower. You can win 20 times your money by going 5 for 5. If that sounds like fun, sign up with our promo code CARDS to claim your first free pick plus first-time deposit offer up to $1,000 in bonus cash. We can't wait to see your entries. Okay, so continue conversation about the field staff side of things, which I think is really important. So to Bloom to Frank Cassiamo, which again everyone should have known this going into today, but Chaim Bloom said Ollie is back, and he said during the presser that he expects most of the field staff to actually say the same. A lot of continuity there. Here's a wild question I want to ask people if you're anti-Ollie. What if when the new guy came in and keeps him, that means he actually likes him and thinks he might be good at his job? What if? Because or at the very least, he wants to see more. Now, it's not being, I feel like I'm being sarcastic.
Well, I like this. But, I like that Bloom is willing to upset like half of the fan base on day one.
Let's think about it. Like, if he didn't like Ollie, that is the easiest decision in the world to earn 1 million brownie points with everyone is to fire Ollie, because he gets rid of the guy a lot of people don't like, and then he changes things, he sticks it to Mo, all that kind of stuff, and he kept him. So the fact that he kept him tells me he actually values being he's like, I like this guy, and I know it's unpopular, but I think it's the right thing to do. I'm going to do the right thing. I think that tells me a lot about him. It really does. I like that. Now, does that mean Ollie's here in 2027? I don't know. I'm not. I think so, but I'm definitely not going to say, "Hey, Ollie's the manager for the Cardinals for the next 15 years, or 5 years, or 3 years, or even past next year." They didn't announce an extension, right? Like, so he is on the last year of his contract, so there is a lot of things can change. But clearly he's been impressed by Ollie this last year, and Bloom was not afraid to make changes last year, right? He moved off Gary LaRock. Michael Gersh, I'm assuming he's not going to come into the GM role again, and I don't know if he'll be around, and if he is, it's a different role. He brought in Serfolio. He brought in a bunch of his own player development guys. He has not been afraid to shake the apple cart because Gary LaRock and Mo were like that. And so I don't think that if he really wanted to make a change there, he wouldn't have done it. So I get if people can feel how they want to feel, but being like losing faith in Ollie, or not losing faith in Ollie, losing faith in Bloom already for keeping Ollie, it's just silly to me, because it's one of those things where it's like, again, if an outside voice and other people in the industry like Ken Rosenthal talk highly of him, and there's a lot of people who seem to really like Ollie. It's basically just Cardinal fans that don't like him, and I don't get it. So doesn't mean he's the right guy, but I just think it's fine to give him
Ollie's
another
my
chance.
favorite manager I've watched in the Cardinals, but you know what? That's maybe my own thing.
Do you remember Tony La Russa?
No.
See, that's part of it. But so you're comparing to Mike Matheny and Mike Schilt.
Hey, okay, I'll put it right now. Public statement. If Mike
Ooh.
Schilt can get through the Cubs and the Brewers for 1 week, I'll glaze him, and then I'll stop.
I also think, like, and again, people forget this. Like, I mean, I know Mo talked about it, which people don't want to hear from Mo, but Derek Gould put in his piece this past week, and maybe more details come out eventually. But it wasn't just Schilt and Mo had a difference. Like, there were complaints and real issues from other Cardinal staff about Mike Schilt, and clearly there was a kind of like with Walt Jocketty and Jeff Lunau back in the day. It's like one of those things had to budge, and then it'd be Walt Jocketty. Like, it wasn't just Mo versus Ollie. It was like apparently a lot more complicated than that, and Schilt ended up going. So I'm not like anti-Schilt. Like, he's not a good manager, but also I don't like when people make the comparisons. It's like, look, you're the Padres. I'm like, well, look at that roster. That doesn't mean that's why you can mess that up, but it's just, I don't know. Like, what do you expect Ollie to do with the talent he's given versus Schilt there? But yeah, so there are some other things too. How'd you feel about? I know you alluded to it earlier, but Bill DeWitt said the message has been received from the fan base.
Yeah.
Go for it.
I mean,
what do you think?
I don't know how genuine they're being about this, because they've gone back and forth. They're like, well, what if we just lower payroll because fans aren't coming? Like, they've said stuff like that in the past. Not that word for word, obviously, but like they've been like, well, the fans are doing themselves a disservice by not coming. And it's like, well, I think they've gone back on that, which is good. I think obviously that's just a bad thing for any owner of any team to be saying, like, just straight up. But I don't know how much they're going to be like, oh, we're going to really invest in this team once it's there. Like, I hope they're doing that. It seems like that's where they're trying to pull us in that direction. But, what the DeWitts say, I always take with a bit of a grain of salt, unless they're saying stuff that is like, payroll's going to go down or things like that. When they're speaking more hypothetically about things like that, I don't really put that much stock into it.
Yeah. And also too, like, one of the big takeaways I do have from this press conference, and one of the things that I just long term now we need to follow is, and I think we can all agree on this, as much as it's what I think Bloom today was exciting, and I like what he said, he's got to back it up, right? Like, no one cares if you're the press conference warrior when nothing ends up changing. And so part of the reason I'm a little bit more like, I'm liking this is because we already heard him last year and we already saw the results the next year. And you cannot, I'm not talking about the major league level, because that wasn't his MO last year. His MO, Mo's MO, was the major league roster. Bloom's was the minor leagues, and the minor leagues took a step forward. And so now it's put up or shut up time for Bloom, but that doesn't mean like in May we should be like, oh, fire Chaim Bloom. Like, I'm gonna use a
Red
Mo
Sox
as in
fans
here.
did that, and it didn't go so well for them.
Yeah, and they're in a good spot, and they don't really like Craig Breslow, so I think there's definitely a lot of Red Sox fans who wish Chaim Bloom was still there. But and also too, he's put in such a weird. I mean, he's been put in a weird situation here in St. Louis, but he's put in even maybe not even weirder, but an equally difficult situation.
Well, the
To
Cardinals
trade a
don't
franchise
have
icon.
Mookie Betts. If the Cardinals had Mookie Betts, I feel like we would be a lot happier.
Oh, for sure, yeah. But then, and then instead he had to step in and trade him away. It's different when you're asked to trade Arenado away. Like apparently he's asked to trade Mookie Betts away. And also too, I think people forget about this part. And I think it's totally fair to critique the return that Bloom got, because if he's that guy, he's supposed to be able to identify talent. Well, Jeter Downs and Verdugo and what's his face were not it. But he also had to attach the David Price contract to it to move their payroll down, because he was told, come in. Like at least Cardinals are being honest with him and saying, here's a runway to do this. The Red Sox were like, hey, succeed Dave Dombrowski, who won the World Series 2 years ago. And what we need you to do is clean up his mess of all of his terrible contracts, bring us down from the league high payroll down by like $100 million. Also, trade Mookie Betts in the process. Also, rebuild our farm system from 30th to like first, like you did, and don't not win the whole time. Like, it's like, what do you like? But so you're taking away my resources and telling me to trade away my best player, but also build up a farm system that's non-existent and compete every year. That's not fair. And so I'm actually, I'm curious in your perspective. I know we kind of talked about this before, but I mean, again, not everyone catches every episode. It's worth rehashing, and also I have some new listeners. I like the fact that the Cardinals have someone like this. Is a really interesting hire to me. It doesn't mean he's going to work for Bloom, but it's really interesting that you're getting a guy who already got to fail in Boston and succeed, right? Like that farm system got built up, and the Red Sox are in the playoffs right now, and they have a legitimate chance to make a run. And again, that's not like we can't do the whole Mo deserves credit for Walt Jocketty, and they shouldn't all go to Walt Jocketty, but then be like, oh, well, Bloom gets all the credit in Boston. Obviously, Craig Breslow gets credit, but Bloom, like Jocketty, helped form the 2000, like the early 2010s Cardinals. Bloom was a big reason why a lot of this young core is in Boston right now. And again, it doesn't just because you make mistakes somewhere else doesn't mean you're going to learn from them. But Bloom seems like a kind of guy to me who's not like, oh, it's my way or the highway. It's only this way. He just talks about innovation and changing. And even in the past few, like I know Mo's talked recently about we need to change and evolve, but even before that, they were pretty stick to their guns and we know what we're doing. And Bloom's coming in of like, I want to learn what the Cardinals have done well. I want to bring what I've done well, and I want to search for everyone in baseball who does things really well to put together an all-star team of decision makers and influencers. Not, hey, how do we just hire from within and do our own thing because we know best? So do you like the fact that we're getting a baseball executive like Bloom that has kind of gotten the role with the punches already rather than someone elevated to the role for the first time?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's 100% where I would have been like most comfortable. Like obviously if they had someone from within that was going to do a great job, that's fine. Like it's kind of like the manager situation after Mike Schilt got fired. I was at that point wanting somebody from outside the organization, not an internal candidate. And instead they ended up getting somebody who I think is really good. Ollie, my favorite manager, but it's okay. You guys can come at me for that. But like, comfortability wise on day one, I feel like Bloom at least gives me the confidence that he's not going to be just awful, right? Like Ollie, when he was hired, I was like, I don't know who this guy is. Maybe he's good, maybe he's not. And, he made mistakes, but, he grew into the role. I feel like Bloom will still need to grow into the role, but it's probably a lot quicker. Considering he has that experience, he's been with the organization for 2 years already. So, it's stuff that I'm all really excited for. If it had been like a Flores, like, yeah, sure, that would have been cool. But I would have liked just with Mo, like somebody that's not directly connected to him. It would have been, I think, the best call and ended up what they did.
Yeah. And it's also to say, like, to your point, like, it's not like I definitely not in the opinion that Flores wouldn't have been an interesting hire and one day could be the president of baseball operations somewhere. Some of it's like you have great people, but like the situation happened and clearly the Cardinals couldn't sell their fan base on, hey, we're going to fix our systemic issues by bringing our own people to do it. Like we gotta innovate and bring the outside. While you're talking there, I was multitasking, so I was able to hear you, but also was listening to Jim Hayes ask Chaim Bloom a great question that I think fans are asking and what we've been talking about. He asked Bloom directly about, what do you tell the fan that's worried that the DeWitt family isn't going to give you the resources necessary to build the team that you envisioned? And his response was, hey, like, we, in the history of the Cardinals, is they've always provided the resources necessary to win. And so he does not envision this being an organization that will ever turn into the Tampa Bay Rays. Again, he didn't use these words, but obviously, like, he doesn't think they're going to become some bottom feeder. But also, I think this is important, and what we've talked about and alluded to before is he was very direct with the DeWitt family last winter about, here are the things I need to make the organization go well. Here's what changes we have to make. Here's the areas I need investment in. And he said they provided those things. They didn't question it. They didn't say no. They didn't stop it. Like, they said, okay, this is what you need. This is what we're going to give you. Again, I don't necessarily, the pie is going to shrink next year. It just is. Like, I'm wrapping my head around those things. We're going to have to wrap our head around them. But I really do think as they move toward the future and revenues are back up, that you'll also see the Major League payroll go up. It's one of the things that I wish Major League Baseball's opened their books on, because then you would see who the cowards are and who are the, like, people who actually put their money where their mouth is. But I know that obviously investing in a pitching lab is not the same thing as going out Juan Soto. Those are very different costs. We understand that. But I do think there's a lot of changes that are happening at the minor league levels, percentage wise, and foundation wise. And some of that stuff, like front end costs a lot of money when you do capital projects, right? Like when you build a $50 million facility, you have to spend that $50 million, but then upkeep's cheaper than that, right? And you can start allocating resources elsewhere. Clearly they have capital projects, they have personnel they want to bring in, all different kinds of things that gets in the way a little bit of spending on that major league reliever. And it's like, I know we joked about it last offseason, but it's like, again, the Jumbotron versus Phil Maton, whatever. Like, that's always gonna be a thing in baseball. But when it comes down to it, if Bloom was like, hey, I think this like, I just say it's a pitching lab, and let's say it costs $12 million. I don't know. Like, that has 15, like 5, 10, 15, that has system, they can change, they can impact the play of hundreds of players in the system versus the one reliever, right? So like those type of investments make sense. You need to do those things. And I also think just we need to continue to realize that, like, the Cardinals lineup's been bad recently, and partially because they just can't develop that big star. Well, what did Boston do lately? They've gotten Roman Anthony. And again, we will see what Christian Campbell, Marcelo Mayer become, but like, and they developed a Rafael Devers, which I know was before Bloom, but then pitching is the big thing too. And that's where the Cardinals really lack. And you look at teams around baseball, and like, when you have good pitching, it takes you quite some ways. And so again, that's some of the strides they're trying to make there too. But any other things that came from the press conference at all that you want to talk about, or just Bloom topics in general? I'm trying to, as we're going through, see if there's anything that's come out since the presser that is additive that from the conversation already. But anything else stand out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really sure what the team is going to look like next year, and I don't think Bloom is really sure what the team is going to look like next year. But I just do hope that they at least put out an interesting product on the field, and I think that's what they're going to try to do. They're not going to necessarily be, but like they got close to the playoffs this year, in my mind. Like, being that close with a couple, like, you can point to a couple mistakes that they made that cost them a significant amount of wins. For example, Eric Fetty, which we've talked about 1,000 times, and also potentially something like, giving Jordan Walker all that runway. Like, how many games did Jordan Walker cost them? It's harder to measure because he's not a starter. You can't really be like, well, he blew up this one game, but like, there's a chance they don't get eliminated in San Francisco. They sweep the Giants if Jordan Walker doesn't drop that ball, right? Like, there's certain mistakes that you can point to where it's like they were very close this year. And I don't think I'm interested to see what Bloom can put together for next year, and what kind of roster that they have at the major league level, because I think that is what's going to keep the fans engaged. I do think that, rebuilding for 3 to 5 years and just being bad for all those 3 to 5 years is going to be very detrimental. But I like if you're saying it's 3 to 5 years before you view them as like a Phillies or Dodgers type team. We haven't viewed the Cardinals as that kind of team since like 2015. So that's probably good anyway. Like that's better than we would have hoped over the last stretch of play that they've had. So that's something that I would like clarification on, is like what the window actually looks like. But I don't know. I think honestly, like phrasing it in a weird way, that like 2006 and 2011 were maybe like some of the weirdest things, like very detrimental to the Cardinals' outlook, where you don't win with those 100-win teams. Like 2015, you don't win. 2013, you don't win. 2004, you don't win. But you win in 2006 and 2011, the two random seasons that you snuck into the playoffs. You underperformed, and then you just won the World Series. I feel like that.
But also think about who those teams had.
Oh, I know that, but I'm saying like I feel like that might have caused most downfall in 2004 and 2013.
Oh, I get what you mean. Sorry.
2006 and 2011. Then I think they wouldn't have gotten complacent and been like, well, you can just sneak into the playoffs and see what happens. Like, no, like those were good teams that underperformed, not bad teams that snuck in and shocked everyone.
It's a great point. Yeah.
So
yeah, they snuck in as a great team rather than or really good team rather than.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Dodgers this year. They have to play a wild card, but they're like everyone knows that they should be one of the top seeds. Like it's not like that. And I don't know, maybe that's what Bloom is trying to get to, and maybe they end up at least we're not the Mets.
True.
But,
but I think Jay, like, here's to Jay here. Like, I'm actually two different things. Like, John says pitching the biggest concern. And then Jay says, well, you can't win with the lineup, or most of your guys hit 230 and 10 home runs. And I think that's part of the problem and part of why we have to talk about, like, this is not a 1 year fix, because it's like the Cardinals, probably the best two things they do right now is they bullpen arms. That's great. But like, that's not like, okay, that's right. It is important, but it's so volatile. And then complementary position players, but not the stars. And the stars, it's also hard. Like, some organizations literally can't develop bats to complement the roster. So like, that is a good thing to be able to do, but they don't have the stars, and those are really expensive or rare to develop. And so that's going to take time. And then the second side of it, or you have to have the resources organizationally that, like, right now they're building a better farm system. But if you traded away like a bunch of top prospects, then you're kind of defeating the purpose of rebuilding that thing. So you're not in a position right now to go trade for it either. And then on the pitching side, you don't have pitching. And the fact that you don't have pitching and you don't have superstars in your lineup, except Ivan Herrera, I think, especially as a catcher, could be that. And we'll see what JJ Weatherhole is. And right now, like, that's why I think it's like to say 3 to 5 years to be a World Series contender is I mean, again, only one team wins a World Series every year. So to like say like the Cardinals have to win a World Series in 5 years, like that should be the standard here. But like, if all 30 teams said that, then like at least 25 teams, if not more, will be upset every year. My point to that is, if Rynel and JJ are guys and Liam Doyle, look, but that's a lot of ifs, right? So we shouldn't be saying, well, like in 3 years, they'll be great because all these things. But if these things happen, this goes faster. If it doesn't, it takes longer. But my point to all that is like, this is going to take time. And I'm enjoying what like they're doing with that. And I believe in the philosophy behind it. And I guess ultimately we're going to see what happens. And the thing that's going to be hard with it is it's not going to change overnight. And we're just going to have to wait and see. And there's for sure a world where the Cardinals end up not doing it, right? There's a world where they end up being kind of mediocre, and then they fire Bloom, and then they go after another guy. And it's just, that's baseball. I think we all agree change from Mo is needed, but change doesn't necessarily mean it's going to get better. Also, from Neilio here, I know this is the Hall of Fame hat they wore this year. That's all I remember with that. I had to look up the exacts, but it's the hat they wore for Cooperstown weekend. But yeah, so, and I think too, like they talked about the uncertainty of CBA, and if there ends up being a salary cap implemented or different changes of things, that changes the landscape big time. It's going to be, it'll be easier for teams to compete, or not easier. It'll be a much different game for teams to compete if there's a cap and a floor than if you can be unhinged spending at the top and honestly unhinged spending at the bottom, where like right now the Oakland Athletics or teams like that, there's barely any penalty. Sorry, the Sacramento Athletics and teams like that, there's barely any penalty for not spending. And so, or Pittsburgh Pirates or whoever. So the landscape of baseball could change in significant ways over the next few years. And the Cardinals have to be prepared for that. They'd be agile to move. So any other topics you want to hit today? Or I know we'll have plenty of things to discuss over the coming weeks and months and the off season, but
it makes me so mad that the Reds are in the playoffs.
I know. Is there anything he said today that makes you feel like there's certain Cardinals that won't be here next year other than those veterans?
No.
Yeah. I definitely believe Katie's report that a couple of the left-handed bats will get traded, but I think anyone's saying,
Burleson, Gorman, and Donovan is an odd group. Because I feel like they don't have that much in common other than just being left-handed.
I mean, they mostly like their status influences each other, right? Where like Newbar corner outfielder, Burleson corner outfielder, if Contreras is still here, couldn't play first base. Donovan might have to be a corner outfielder this year, depending on who they've got around still. And also, they all performed at different levels, but for the most part, they're on base, bat first guys with some power. Like Burley's not like, except for Gorm, right? He's the big power guy. Yeah, but I'm saying like Donovan, Newbar, and Burleson, they just all do it to different levels and degrees.
Yeah.
And also too, it's like if they said trade the right-handed bats, you're talking about Ivan Herrera, you're not trading probably, and Jordan Walker. So it's like, it's a little different ball game for them right now. But I my guess is it's Newt and Gorm that are gone. I think they hold on to Donnie and Burleson. And I know people, and I'm not blaming people for disagreeing with that because I understand you'll get way more for Burleson and Donovan. But again, I think part of this is I think they're far, but I don't think they're so far that you have to tear down to the total studs. It's just going to take time, and both of those guys could be here for a while. And also Burleson, you could sell high right now, but you also could make that trade later. Donovan, if you're going to trade him, you should trade him now. That's true. But I would think you should extend him and keep him. I'd love that. But
will they extend? That's another question that I would have had for Bloom, I guess, if he sees any. Anyway, I don't know. He probably wouldn't answer that. But
yeah, I wonder if it's like, I don't know. Yeah, you have to be very strategic with how you answer those questions, right? Because if you're like, are you going to trade
leverage and
then they'll like not answer directly. But could you like formulate a question of, are you restricting yourself from committing to players on? Well, they're like, we're always open to that. You had to figure like, how do you ask that question in a way that they would actually answer it? That's why they get paid the big. Well, anyways, that's why they're in the room, right? That's why Gould is in the room and Wu and Jones. They do a good job of answering those or asking those questions. So, but I think sometimes people are making the assumption, and I mean, I'm not saying for sure they're going to extend people or not, or sign people or whatever, but I think some people are making the assumptions like, oh, if they're not spending money, they won't extend people. I'm like, I don't know if that's true if you got enough money. So we'll see what happens with all that. But anyways, well, appreciate you guys' support as always. Chaim Bloom era has begun. There will be more. I'm sure there'll be announcements in terms of what they plan to do hiring wise or staffing changes they make in the front office soon. Same with the field staff. Seems like it's mostly gonna be the same, but he didn't say it's gonna be the.
Josh, are you gonna be back next year in the front office?
Yeah, my behind the scenes role where I figure out how to hold their water as much as possible. I don't know. Bloom hasn't extended that invite to me yet, so we'll see.
That's rough.
Mo was always texting me saying, "Thanks for being nice to me today." Just kidding. I was a little offended he didn't thank me at a season press conference, but it's fine.
Thank Bernie, friend of the show.
He did thank Bernie, so, and rightfully so. And I'm joking. Mo probably. I mean, I know Mo knows me, but he doesn't need to thank me. Real quick, I'm going to look at this real quick, especially Neilio. Appreciate your support as always. You see maybe some unforeseen player movement, maybe from the Myers to be invited to spring training. Players we've not heard of doing that. I mean, the casual fan won't know who Reinel Rodriguez is yet, but I'm sure he gets a spotlight there. Joshua Baez, Daniel Ortiz had a really good year, was just named to MLB's all-second team for prospects. Like maybe he gets a look. He's a little far away though. Obviously, I think Liam Doyle are going to see at spring training. And also, I mean, I think Bloom's going to be opportunistic, right? So I would not be shocked at all if like there's a catching prospect that he wants to move to go get like prospect for prospect swap or young controllable starter, stuff like that. Like I think if he thinks it makes sense for their timeline, I think he'll consider doing things, but I would not predict or be like, the Cardinals are going to trade all these prospects. It's like maybe, but probably not. So, but Graham, Mo texted me and asked me to be patient. So, then wouldn't that be amazing if he was like the special advisor of patience or projects of patience project?
He didn't say patience a single time, which I don't think.
Which it's sad because if he said it, people meme him, but it's true, right? You do need like at this point, there is patience needed for this process. It got old from Mo because he kept saying patience and things didn't change. So like at that point, it's like, dude, can't have any more patience with you. But
yeah, true.
Bloom, I think, earns that a little bit here. So yeah, let's we'll see. I'd love to see if we can get Mo on at some point but I'm sure that's gonna be at least quite some time. He's not gonna be doing anything like that for the next few months. So hey, always appreciate you guys' support. Oh, Neil just became a member. Thanks, man. Appreciate that. As always, you can, or another thing, like you guys can join our channel membership. You have to do that I think you can only do it on the web browser version of YouTube. You get access to our Discord through that, which is the fun conversations we have in there. You
might get access to Mo Part 2. I don't know. We'll see.
We'll see. And then we've also talked about, and at some point this offseason, we'll sit down and figure out if there's more things we can provide for you guys over there. And yeah, I thought you were a member too already. I was about to say something and then I didn't, but yeah, you're good, man. Appreciate that. But yeah, anyways, we always appreciate the support on the podcast. Like and subscribe, helps channel a ton. Let us know what your thoughts of the press conference are and questions you have or things we're going to talk about. I know I'll be out of the country for the next few episodes, so Sandy and Andrew will hold down the fort. Maybe we'll have some guests on as well. But we're excited for the off season. We're excited for all that's to come. And we'll be playoffs. Our prediction should be going on Twitter here soon, I'm guessing. So that'll be I was going to reveal mine, but I guess I'll let Twitter do it.
Sandy's was unhinged as always, but that's
as always. That's true. Bloom and onions will be the new specialty food at Busch Stadium this year. Oh, man. All right. Well, thanks as always. Like, subscribe. We'll see you next time. Peace. Thanks, Chaim.
Thanks, Chaim.